Yep, this was a secret Lumia phone that Nokia never launched, and it had one of the coolest features I've ever seen. It didn't exactly have a name. I think it was initially called as Goldfinger when they were developing it in 2013, and eventually in 2014 they gave it the name McLaren. It was like a code name which companies usually give their projects. And the coolest feature it had was that it has actual 3D touch. I'm not talking about Apple's implementation where you press inwards of a display. This phone could evaluate what's around it, like how you're holding it and how you hover your finger on the display. It could use this sensor data to do a bunch of things, allow you to navigate the UI without having to click on it, or kind of understand how you're holding the phone, whether in portrait or landscape orientation, and do a bunch of things with it. Now again, this phone never really got past the prototype phase, so it's not a fully developed module, even though the design is very reminiscent of the Lumia 1020, the legendary phone with a 41 megapixel camera. This one was rumored to have only like a 21 megapixel camera, so it wasn't a camera beast by any means. And I think the development took more time than they expected. I mean, by the time this would come out, it would have already been out of date back in 2014. That's a shame because it's a really cool device and I don't see any other phone replicating something like that. Sure, we didn't get to see a fully developed model, we only have videos on prototypes, but imagine that. Imagine a phone that could completely understand what's around it, how you're holding it, what's the elevation and everything. I mean, locking your orientation is just like the first step. You could do so many more things. And even though we have seen these hovering gesture features before, I've personally used one of those. My Galaxy S5 back in 2014 had that air view gesture, where you could hover your finger over certain elements like a gallery and it will just pop out the photo. It was cool for a while and I eventually disabled it. Same with that squeezing gesture. I think Google Pixel 3 series had that side squeeze, which they called as Active Edge, I believe. You could squeeze it to activate Google Assistant or do something else with it. All these features are effectively non-existent as of now because they are just gimmicks that are kind of cool for a time being, but I would have loved to see the final version of this in a Windows phone, even if it's just for one or two variants, because Windows Phone by itself is such an iconic device that anything they did was kind of a classic. The main reason it died was because the platform could not keep up with Android and iOS rapidly progressing, but this phone was essentially the upgrade over the Lumia 1020, so I guess it's like the 1030 that we never got. If it had better cameras and a fully fledged software with that 3D touch thing, it would have been a really cool flagship, especially for that time in 2014 when it was all about gimmicks and features. Man, I think Microsoft may have pulled the plug on this thing way too soon because after that Windows Phone was essentially dead. So in a very real sense, Nokia McLaren was the last great Windows phone to be ever attempted. There are a few more prototypes of the unreleased Microsoft 960 XL or something, but none of them seemed all that interesting to me compared to this. But what do you think? Are you one of those lucky people who got to use a Windows phone? I missed out on it.